everyone, welcome back to Motuts, Motion Made Easy. My name is Jon Navarro, and today we'll be featuring a motion animation tutorial inspired by the 1968 horror classic Night of the Living Dead, and this is going to be in honor of George A. Romero, the director, whose birthday passed this week. So let's get started. First, let's take a look at the demo to get an idea of what we're going to try to recreate. So as you can see in our demo, we have the title that sits in the center. We have a animated moon that rises from off screen. And then as the moon rises, we see that there's some animation going on with the shadow. And we have a eerie kind of like radioactive fog in the background. So those are the elements that we're going to try to recreate. There are some things that were not native to motion, some outside resources that I added to create this demo. So we won't be focusing on those today, but I will try to give you links in the description on where you can go to get those resources. Now, this title animation was inspired by the original 1968 movie poster, which you see here. Very minimalistic, black and white, block lettering. So that was the original inspiration we were drawing on. So now let's go into motion and see how we're going to try to recreate this and put this whole thing together. So I want to start by creating a new project. So let's go to File, New, select Motion Project. We want this to be 1080p, Broadcast, HD, and we're going to change the frame rate to 24 frames per second. Traditionally with these animations, I try to do this at 15 frames per second just to keep everything simple and keep the file sizes smaller. But for the purposes of the tutorial, I'm going to do it in 24 frames per second today. Let's click OK. Now that we have our new window, let's first make sure we fit everything in the frame so we can see what's going on. Let's also hit Shift V, and that's just going to give us the ability to view anything that falls outside of the window's boundaries. Now, the first thing we want to do is we want to create our groups where our different layers are going to be nested. So we have 4 groups that we're going to create. So let's just add 3 more groups. And you can see the shortcut for that is Shift Command N. So this bottom group here, this is going to be our fog group, that radioactive fog. So let's just rename this group Fog. The group that's going to be above that is going to be the background, and this background group is where we're going to have our floor and our moon. This group is going to be the title, and then this top group is going to be the white that's going to kind of create that transition once the moon reaches its peak height, and then the title kind of bleeds in and it goes from that black to white. So now that we have our groups created, so the first thing I want to do is I want to select the fog group. Then I want to go into the library. I want to click on particle emitter, and then I want to click on nature. Now what I want to do here is I want to click on the search, and I want to type simple, and you'll see we have simple background. Let's select that and let's click apply. So if we play that through, you'll see this creates a kind of foggy radioactive background. We really don't need to do anything else to this other than to resize it. So let's go into the inspector, and we want to make sure that this is the size of the comp. So we're going to change the width. We're going to go a little bit longer than the 1080. So we're going to do 1280, and then we want to change the height to the 1920. So you'll see that spreads out. So now we can lock this fog group. That's in the background. We're not really going to need to do anything else to this other than later when we adjust the animation. So for now, we can turn this layer off. Next, we're going to click on the background layer, and we're going to create the floor and the moon. So let's start with the floor. We're going to click in the library, click on content. So in the content window, we're going to click on images, and then in the search, we're going to type in slate, and you'll see we have this slate red PNG. We're going to apply that to the background. And now the same thing, we want to resize this to the comp. So we are going to click on the Properties tab, and we're going to open up the scale. And you can see right now it's set to 79%. we're just going to make this 100%. So you'll see it spills outside of the boundaries, but that's fine because we need it to be slightly bigger anyway. So the next thing we want to do is adjust the rotation. So let's open the rotation, and we're going to rotate this on the y-axis 90 degrees. Now we're going to adjust the position, and we're going to make this minus 360. So now you can see that our slate texture is positioned on the floor, but we do need to adjust the width so that it completely goes beyond the borders. So we're going to go back into scale. Let's click open scale, and we're going to adjust the X scale to 125. So now that that's done, we can lock this and now select this background. And now what we're going to do is go back into the library, and we're going to find our moon. So again, let's get out of that. We want to go into content, and we want to click all, and then we want to type in moon. And then we're going to take this moon PNG and click apply. So now what we're going to do is adjust this moon so that it's bigger and it matches the demo comp. And I'm also noticing I made a little mistake here. So we're just going to go to the beginning of the comp. We're going to select this layer. We're going to hit I. I'm going to select this, unlock it, hit I. And the same thing with the fog. We're going to select the fog and I, so that everything starts at the 0-second mark. Let's lock this back up, lock that back up. So now let's select the moon. We're going to adjust the properties. So what I want to do is go into the scale. I want to make the scale of the moon 375%. So now this is huge. Now what I want to do is I want to adjust the position. So I want to send this back in Z space minus 1080. And I also want to adjust the Y. Now what I'm going to do is I'm going to move the playhead to the end of the comp, because when I adjust the Y, I want to adjust it to its final position. So we're going to hit minus and drag down. I want the final position to be somewhere around there. So we're going to say minus 375 is what I want the final position to be. So now, as you can see here, the floor and the moon are overlapping, and we want the moon to be behind the floor, not in front of it. So the easiest thing we can do is just grab the moon layer and drag it down, and now it's behind each other. And now that the moon is behind the floor, we can see that the moon is peeking out through the bottom of the floor. That means the floor is not low enough. So let's select the floor again, unlock it, and drag the Y position down minus 390. That looks like that works right there. So now we can lock these up. The next thing we're going to do is create the text. So let's click on the title. Let's click the title tool, and we're going to click in the center here. And now the font that I used is a font called Survivant. I'm going to leave a link in the description so you can use this font as well, or you can choose to use any font that you like, really. But this was the closest font that I could find to what was in the original poster title. So we're just going to type in our title. I'll select all and change the alignment to center. And then I want to go into the Properties tab, and I just want to reset the positions parameter. So now from here, what we're going to do is we're going to play around with the sizing of the font. It's going to be different sizes for each line. Again, you can do whatever you want with the title. You don't need to do this and have it be an exact match to the demo or even an exact match to the poster. Again, just use your creativity here. Okay. So hang on for a minute while I make these adjustments, and then we'll move forward. Okay, so now that I've adjusted the font kind of close to what it looks like in the title, I just want to adjust the anchor point. So we're going to go into Properties and Anchor Point, and we want to adjust the Y until it's about centered. So now we're pretty much halfway there. Okay. So the next thing we're going to do here, because I forgot to do it earlier, is we're going to set up the light rigging for the background. So let's select the background, unlock it, and we're going to add a light to this layer. So let's add a new object, light. We're going to switch to 3D, and immediately you see that it's affecting what we've created so far. So what I want to do is I want to bring this light down into the background layer. And what I want to do is I want to change this from a point light to a spotlight, and I want to change the parameters of this light. So we're going to change the cone angle to 70. We're going to change the edge softness to 30. We're going to keep the diameter at 10, and then we're going to turn on shadows. Ooh, that's eerie. And we're going to open the shadows. I want the softness of the shadows to be set to 20. Now, in the light properties, I want to change the color to clover, that green color we were using before, and close that. I want to set the intensity to 400, and I want the fall off to be 3%, fall off start to be 3%, and the fall off to be 3%. Now in the properties, we're going to adjust the position, and I want the Z position to be minus 960, and I want the Y position to be 325. I want to rotate the X rotation minus 45 degrees. And so now you'll see it's affecting the background, it's affecting the floor. And so this needs to be slightly higher. We'll set this to 575, looks good. Okay. And you can see it's casting a shadow here on the floor. What we can do is we can adjust the title a little bit. Let's go in here and adjust the height on the Y. The next thing, let's just add a camera so that we can move around and see where everything is kind of lined up. Okay, that's good. Double click, that resets that. Okay, so now that we have our light rig set up, we can lock the fog, lock the background. So now we have pretty much almost every element set up. Now we can go into the final element, which is creating the wipe for the title transition. So if you've seen any of my previous tutorials, such as the Tron tutorial, you'll know that we use a pre-built-in transition emitter that comes with motion, and there's several different options, and then we can customize them to change the look of it. We'll start by going into the wipe group. I want to create a basic background that the wipe is going to be pulling from. So we'll create this square. Now the first thing I want to do with this square, you can see it turned black, and that's because it's taking in the lighting settings. So we want to change that. So we're going to go into properties, and under lighting where it says inherited, we want to turn that off. We also want to turn off the cast shadows and receive shadows. We don't want that. Now we're going to readjust the size of this so that it fits the comp. Select the rectangle, go into the shape tab, click on geometry, and then we're going to change the size, change the width to 1920, change the height to 1080, and then click on properties, and we're just going to reset the position parameter. So now the next part of this is finding that transition. You're going to click in the library, click on replicators, click on transitional, and then you're going to look for dots out top. So with the wipe group selected, we'll click apply. That applies that transition. If we just play that through, you'll see the dots come out. So now what do we do here? We need to create an image mask. So we're going to select the rectangle first. We're going to go into Object, Add Image Mask, and then in the Inspector window, in the drop-down well, we're going to select the replicator, and we're going to put that in. And so now, when we scrub that through, we see that it just reveals what was behind it. What we need to do is we need to set the mask blend mode from add to subtract. So now we see when that transition comes down, we're left with the white wall because we want white to be there. We want the transition to go from black to white. So now we can see that our comp is a little bit too big, or I should say our rectangle is a little bit too big because now we can see that it's going outside the boundaries here. So let's just shrink this. So let's select the rectangle, and in the geometry under the shape tab, let's make the width, instead of 1920, let's make it 720, and let's change the height from 1080 to let's do 580. So now when we wipe through, we see we have that white background. So now there's one more step here to finish that, and we need to add an additional image mask to the wipe group. So we're going to select the wipe group, Object, Add Image Mask, or Shift Command 10, and in the image mask source well, we're going to take the title group, drag and drop that in there. And then we want to turn the title back on, of course. So now, when we play that through, this is what we get. Boom. Transition from black to white. Okay. But we want this to look cooler because that doesn't look cool. Dots. So what we're going to do is we're going to go back into the library. We're going to find a particle that looks more like a radioactive fog. We go into library. We're going to click on contents, particle images, and there's a bunch of blurs here. We can just find one that looks suitable. And this is the one, blur number 10, that I used for my demo. So that's the one that we're going to use here. So I want to select the group, click apply, and then under the replicator, I just want to twirl that open. And this is the source image using this dot here as the source for the replicator. So all I'm going to do is click and drag that over the dot, and now you'll see it instantly changed in our preview window. We see that there's these kind of shreds that are going through. So now we just need to adjust the replicator. So we can delete this circle now. We don't need that. Go back into the replicator. Let's go back into the inspector and let's change some of this. So we want to increase the columns. So let's change this to 30 columns and let's change this to 15 rows. And now that's completely filled in. Now when we play that back, you get this nice kind of creepy, fiery blend energy. And we're going to take this a step further. What we want to do here is we want to go down into the cell controls. We're going to randomize the angle of the cell by 30 degrees. And we're also going to randomize the scale by 10%. And so now when we play that back, you'll see there's a little bit of variation in it, and it kind of has that foggy, eerie transition. So now we're almost at the finish line, guys. I just want to do some housekeeping here. So now the last part of this is to actually animate the background, animate the moon. So what we want to do is we want to start by going to the end of the timeline. We want to unlock our background layer, select the moon, and there's two ways that we can do this. We can either animate this by a throw behavior, but to simplify things, we're just going to use keyframes. Keyframes are something that a lot of you After Effects guys are used to, so that's how we're going to do this. So we're going to select the moon, we're going to hit the record button, we're going to go into properties, and because this is our final, this is where we want the final position to be, we're going to create a position keyframe. Then we're going to scroll to the beginning of this animation, and on the Y we're going to just adjust the height for the Y, and I think because I've done this before, I know the exact number. I think minus 1600 should get us completely off the screen. And so there's some things that I'm noticing right now with the background, and that is we can still see the floor and we can still see this, and that's because we have to add a parameter behavior to the actual light. So let's stop the recording, let's select the light, and we want to add the parameter behavior of motion tracking. We want to match move to the light, and then go to the end here. You can see right now the match move is for some reason aligning this to the floor. We want to change it from the floor to the moon. And so now you'll see the light has kind of disappeared. Well, not really disappeared, it's gotten dimmer. And that's because it shifted the light up. So let's select the light, and you'll see it moved the light on its y-axis to 1800. And we had it set before at 575. So let's put that back to 575. And so now when we play this back, you'll see as it comes on, the floor lights up. So there's a couple different things that we have to clean up here. Obviously, we don't want the transition to start until the moon is fully up. So at around 6 seconds is when I want the moon to reach its final position. So I'm going to select the moon, I'm going to add a position keyframe here. I'm going to go to the end, minus 375. I'm going to remove all of those position keyframes, and I'm going to make this minus 375. So now when we play that through, boom, moon comes up here, and then at 6 seconds, that's when I want the wipe to start. So let's lock the background because the background's done. Let's go into the wipe, this emitter. Let's drag that so dots out. We want that to start at 6 seconds. And then we want the rectangle, set the endpoint to 6 seconds as well. Set the whole wipe endpoint to 6 seconds. And when we play that through now, that starts there. So now if we go back, we don't see anything. So we start at full black, play that through, the moon comes up, we have our title, It's great. So there's a couple things that's missing that I'm noticing. We want to see the detail in the moon. So let's open up the moon, and what we want to do is add a glow. Go into library, go into filters, glow, bloom, apply bloom. And now you see the moon has this nice kind of radioactive texture to it. It looks sick. And then we also want to go back in and we want to turn on our fog. So let's go into the fog layer, and we want the fog to start just before this transition starts. So yeah, right around 6:02. So let's go into the inspector, because you can see we don't see the fog yet, and that's because the layer again is being affected by the lighting. So let's click on the background. Let's turn off inherited lighting, and we need to change the position of the fog so that it's behind the moon. So let's just move this into Z space and just start to push that back. Let's say, so now we see that fog is back there, and we need to make it bigger now because we pushed it back into the Z space. So let's just increase the scale 200%, and we want it to start at around 6:2. And now let's click out, go to the beginning of the animation, and if we play that through, and there you have it. Okay guys, so I noticed that we weren't seeing the shadow on the floor here. So making some adjustments. Set the rotation to -70, set the height to 675, and change title back in Z space. So we'll do -425. All right guys, and that's it. So thanks again for joining us. I hope you enjoyed this Night of the Living Dead tutorial. Once again, happy birthday to the late great George A. Romero. We hope you'll join us again next time, and if you like this content, please click the like and subscribe button. If you'd like to interact with us, you can find us on Instagram, Facebook, and Twitter. You can leave your comments, questions, and suggestions for any future tutorials you'd like to see. Again, my name is Jon Navarro. Thanks for watching.